Deputy Chief Master. I'm with the Port Royal Police Department. I'm also the person in Port Royal that handles the alligator tags for the town of Port Royal. So I am their guy, all right? Today, I put this together because I thought it was something that would benefit the community of Port Royal and also anybody that's listening out there on social media on the habitats of alligators in this town. So we get an understanding of what they do, why they do it, and what we need to do to protect ourselves and them. So what I did is I reached out to South Carolina Department of Natural Resources, that's correct, SCDNR, and I asked Miss Rebecca with them to come down and talk to you. She is the alligator marine biologist for SCDNR. She is the subject matter expert, and I'll let her introduce herself. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank y'all for being here, and thank you for having me. We're going to talk about alligators today, and hopefully answer some of the questions or concerns you may have. Just a little introduction about me. I am an alligator biologist with DNR. In particular, what I do is I'm the nuisance coordinator for the upper coastal part of the state. So all of the states in the upper coastal area, Georgetown, Horry, by Lake Marion, I cover all of those counties. I'm the one answering phone calls about nuisance alligators, helping determine if they need to be removed or not, and issuing permits to do so. But another big part of my job is I am the outreach coordinator for the alligator program statewide. So I travel all over the state, talking to groups like y'all, talking to HOAs about alligators. The hope is that the more people understand them, understand their behaviors, the more willing they are to live with alligators, because you're able to understand if they're being a nuisance or not and how to avoid any negative interactions with them. That doesn't always happen, but you know, the more you know, the safer you can be when interacting with them. Because we'll discuss this a bit in the presentation, but it's unavoidable interacting with them. They are here and so are we, and neither of us are going anywhere. So we do have to learn how to coexist with them. And so we'll talk a bit about that today. We'll just kind of jump right in. Some history about alligators. So in the 1960s, they reached near extinction levels nationwide because of overhunting for their hides and their meat. So because of that, they were placed under federal and state protection throughout their entire range in the United States until the populations were able to rebound and stabilize. Once they had rebounded, they were removed from federal protection, but they're still federally and state managed today. So every state that has alligators in it is managed by their Department of Natural Resources. And so everything alligator related does have to come through the Department of Natural Resources because we need to monitor what's going on with them in the state and adjust any rules and regulations depending on what's happening with them. Now, why are they important? Depends on who you ask what kind of answer you're going to get. Ecologically, they're a keystone species, so their very presence in an environment heavily impacts all other species living there. So they create habitat. This top picture here is a hole that an alligator dug in the middle of the woods in the time of drought. When it started raining, the hole was filled with rainwater, and it was not only a source of water for the alligator that dug the hole, but all other critters in the area. They also have this really cool relationship with nesting birds. So studies have shown that birds will actively nest over waterways that alligators live in. And what this does is the presence of the alligator in the water deters other predators like snakes and raccoons from climbing up into the tree and eating all the eggs and the chicks. But the alligator does benefit because occasionally an egg or chick will fall out and it gets a nice little snack. But the studies have shown that the presence of that alligator below heavily impacts the success rate of those birds. So it's really helpful for them. They're also really good at controlling prey populations. The one I hear the most, especially where I'm based, is on golf courses. Golf courses love having alligators there because that usually means there's no geese. So they would much prefer the alligators because they chase the geese away. So they're very good at controlling prey populations. They're also a great hunting resource, and that's a great economic resource for South Carolina, not just for our agency, but for local businesses like hunting tour guides, processors, because we have one of the most popular hunts in South Carolina. The alligator hunt is one of the most popular hunts in South Carolina. I'll talk a bit about that later, but we had over 12,000 people apply last year. So it's really great for local businesses. But on the other end of the spectrum, we are entering the northernmost part of their range, so it's getting more and more rare to see alligators. So people like to come here and just view them in the wild, see what they're doing in their natural habitat. So like I said, why they're important depends on who you ask. Now in the United States, alligators can be found along the coast from Texas up into North Carolina. In South Carolina, they can be found anywhere below the fall line. So any of these counties in green, if there's a source of fresh water nearby, it's possible that there is, was, or will be an alligator there. They do prefer fresh water, but occasionally they'll venture into brackish water and occasionally the ocean, but not for long periods. They'll pop into the ocean, especially June and July. We get a lot of calls that they're on the beach and they're in the ocean. They're either out there looking for blue crab, because they really like blue crab, or sometimes they're using the waves to kind of get from one point to another. So instead of walking 10, 20, 30 miles over land, they'll pop into the ocean, ride the waves for a while, and then pop back out. But they're like us where they can't have a lot of intake of salt water, so they're not staying there for very long periods. Community ponds are really important for juveniles, especially those between 3 and 7 feet, especially like new developments that have a lot of the smaller community ponds throughout the community. Once alligators hit about 2 to 3 feet, mom's kicking them out of home, and they're off on their own for the first time, and they're looking for a new place to live. And so these juveniles are looking for ponds big enough for them, has enough food for them, but it's not so big that the 10, 12-foot alligators are living there, because alligators are cannibalistic and are very territorial, and they will fight and eat smaller ones. So these smaller juveniles are looking for the smaller ponds to kind of stay safe and just do what they need to do to survive. Now thankfully, we only have American alligators here. We do not have crocodiles in South Carolina. Occasionally we've had 1 or 2 calls about them, and it was a pet that was brought here from Florida and it was released. And so we had to go out and capture it and bring it back to either the owner or a place where that could take care of crocodiles. But they don't exist here naturally. It gets too cold in the winter for them. Now a couple ways you can kind of tell the difference. And really it's easiest to tell the difference with a bird's eye view. So this picture was taken in the Everglades in Florida. That's the only place where the American alligator and the American crocodile coexist. And so looking at a bird's eye, it's very clear they're 2 different animals. Alligators have a really rounded U-shaped snout, and when their mouths are closed, you only see top set of teeth. Whereas crocodiles have that pointy V-shaped snout, and you see top and bottom set of teeth when their mouths are closed. So like in my opinion, crocodiles just tend to look a lot meaner because they're a lot bonier, you see a lot more teeth when their mouths are closed. And crocodiles tend to be a lot more aggressive just because. It's weird to say, but kind of in our field, the alligators are the puppy dogs of the crocodilians, because crocodiles tend to just get in fights because they want to. So if you're seeing something in the water and you're like, I don't know if that's a crocodile or an alligator, 9 times out of 10 it is an alligator. But if you are really unsure, give us a call, and if we think there might be a chance it's a crocodile, we can send someone out there to identify it, because that's when we have to capture them. Now what do they eat? They eat anything meat-shaped, meat-flavored. If it looks or smells like meat, they're going to go after it. The size of their meal depends on how big they are, so they start off life at a couple inches. They're eating aquatic insects, tadpoles. The bigger they get, the bigger their meal sizes can get. The really big alligators will eat smaller alligators. They eat deer. So it really just depends on how big they are, what kind of meals they're eating. Unfortunately, that does mean that they will eat dogs and cats. And this is happening more and more often. And so this is why we really stress to people, if you're out with your dog or your cat, keep them on a leash and well away from the pond. Alligators are ambush predators, so they'll hunt from the edge of the water. They'll use their tail to propel themselves out of the water, grab their prey, and go back to the water, where they'll drown it and save it for later. They're not hunting down their meal on land. So the further back you are from the water, the safer you and your dog are. And another reason we really stress this is because a lot of the past incidents where people have been hurt, a dog was involved. And the dog usually came out of it unscathed and the person didn't. So we really want you to stay safe when you're out with your pets and just staying well away from the water's edge, especially if you know there's an alligator present. So like all reptiles, alligators are ectothermic, so they're cold-blooded and they need the sun's heat to essentially function. They'll bask, and I'm sure you've seen it, they'll just laying out by the edge of the water. What they're doing is they're soaking up the sun, they're converting that heat into energy, and they're storing that energy for later. They need it to move around, to digest food, maintain their body temperature, you name it. So if you ever come across a basking alligator, you just want to keep your distance and make sure you're not between it and the nearest body of water, because once they're frightened and they're spooked, that's where they're headed. And we want to make sure that you're not in their path, because they will plow you down if you are in their path to get to the water. So just giving it its distance and staying away from the water, because that's where it's going. Occasionally, you'll see a basking alligator kind of giving you a side eye, and they're doing it with their mouths open. The side eye is just to keep an eye on you, because we are their only predators, essentially. So they're making sure that the threat is staying well away, and so they know when they need to go to the water. The mouth open is very similar to a dog panting. It's just helping regulate all the heat that they're intaking. So recap, just some normal behaviors we like to see. If you come across an alligator in the water and it goes underwater or swims away, that's great. That means it still has a natural fear of people. If it's on the land and you startle upon it and it runs to the water, again, that's great. That's what they should be doing. They should be going the opposite direction of where you are. Basking alligators is completely normal. Again, just give them their space and let them do what they need to do. Same with eating. I get a lot of calls where people think alligators are being aggressive because they're eating the ducks and the turtles and the fish in the pond. It's completely normal. I mean, they're an animal, they've got to eat, and I'd much rather them eat the ducks in your pond than eat your pets or you. So just because they're eating their natural prey items, that does not make them aggressive. Now this video here, I'm going to play this. Small disclaimer, big disclaimer, don't try this at home. This was taken by my boss, who knows alligator behavior and knows what she's doing. This was, so this was in one of our properties, Santee Coastal Reserve in McClellanville. There's no water nearby, and so this alligator was just walking along the avenue. And so she stopped to get out the car to see where it was going, what it would do. And the disclaimer is because she does get close to it. Again, that's because she understands alligator behavior and knows what she's looking for. So as you can see, as she started approaching it, it dropped to the ground. They're not like mammals. You can't just shoo them across the road. They're going to drop and wait you out. And so this is how they often end up stuck in the middle of roadways, is they're not going to, you can't just shoo them. You have to wait them out, or we have to send someone to help get it along. So he's starting to hiss at her because she's getting too close. That was her first warning. That was the second and last warning. So that's what we call a bluff lunge, and the reason it did that is because she was getting too close to its tail. So it wanted to make sure that it put its mouth, which is its protection, between the rest of its body. That bluff lunge, sometimes people will call and say, an alligator chased me down, and once we try to understand the situation, that's what happened. They're telling you back off. I can and will defend myself, but I really don't want to, so you back off first. And this is why we always say, if you come across one on land, give it plenty of space. It will drop and it will wait you out, and sometimes it will wait people out for hours. Like I said, this is how they get stuck in the middle of roadways. This is how they get stuck under cars and garages. They get frightened and they drop, and you can't just kind of move them away. So we do have to give them the time and space. But if it's in a place where it really shouldn't be and it's drawing a crowd, we can send people to help it along as well. Because it's not particularly being a nuisance at that time. It's just wrong place, wrong time, and it's drawing a crowd, and we need to help it along to where it's going. So this kind of overview of their behavior based off of the season. So we are in the spring. They are coming out from their winter hibernation, which is called brumation. It's not entirely like bears' hibernation, so alligators don't go completely dormant. their bodies just enter this version of stasis because it's too cold to get energy to really function. So they're not eating over the winter, they're not moving around too much. They'll come out when we get the occasional warm days or weeks, but they're really not doing much because they just don't have the energy to. But now that it's springtime and the temperature is getting warmer and warmer, they're coming out and they're all over the place. And every year it seems we forget that they live here because we go 4 or 5 months without seeing them, and then suddenly they are everywhere. And so this is the time when we get a lot of calls because they're like, I forgot alligators lived here. They're all over the place. They're infesting. What they're doing is they're making up for the winter. They are traveling miles and miles a day sometimes looking for food. The juveniles are looking for a new place to call home. The adults are traveling all over the place looking for mates, especially adult males. They will travel 10, 20 miles a day looking for as many mates as he can find. So they're just moving around a lot. So this is the time where they may pop into a pond. You see them, and it may be gone the next day and may be gone in a week because they're not sticking around long unless they're establishing it as their home territory. They stay active through the fall, but their movements tend to become a lot more restricted because they've established their home ranges. It's starting to get way too hot for them to move around too much, so they're still basking, they're still eating, but they're not traveling miles and miles a day. And then we start, the females start laying their nest in the late summer. So the females are really restricted to the nest area, and then the eggs hatch a month or so later. So it's a really quick turnaround for her. So she's staying really restricted, guarding the nest, guarding the eggs. And then usually around October, November is when we stop seeing them for the year. So there is one way to kind of guesstimate how big an alligator is. The amount of inches from between the nose to between the eyes, each inch equals about a foot. So if it looks like it's about 8 inches nose to eyes, it's about an 8-foot alligator. This is not a fail-proof method. I certainly don't want you getting close enough to give us an accurate measurement. I'd much rather you call and say, yeah, there's a 14-foot alligator here, and we find out it's 6, or vice versa, than you getting close enough to stick up a tape measure. But I find it's really helpful in narrowing down the range because I'm not good at looking at an alligator across the pond and saying, yeah, that's definitely 8 feet. But I can look at it and say, okay, well, it's 8 to 10 feet, or it's 6 to 8 feet. I can give it a narrow range so we can kind of see about how big it is. Next couple slides are just kind of a few indicators of the different size classes we have. We have the eggs and hatchlings. So this picture on the left is a nest that a mom built. So they can be anywhere, a couple feet to 5 feet high and wide. It's essentially a giant mound of debris. What she does is she builds the mound, she buries the eggs in them, and then she'll hang out around or on the nest for the month it takes them to hatch, to protect them. And the reason is because everything eats alligator eggs and everything eats alligator hatchlings. So she has to do what she can to protect them. One of the things she does is she can lay anywhere between 20 and 60 eggs, because usually about half of those actually hatch, and about half of the ones that hatch actually survive a year old. So again, she's just really trying to get as many as she can successful. And they're very small. They get mistaken for lizards all the time because they're only a couple inches, they're only a few ounces. They're very, very tiny when they're born. Then we have the juveniles, anywhere between 2 and 6 feet. These are smaller than people tend to think they are. So one thing I like to point out is that's me holding an alligator there that was about 6.5 feet. I'm 5 feet tall. At 6.5 feet, it was maybe 30 pounds. And this is the size alligator we get the most calls about. People are worried that it's gonna drag their German Shepherd, it's gonna drag their grandma into the pond. Now they can certainly do some damage if you get too close to it. Don't put a body part by their mouth, that can hurt. They're incredibly fast, they're incredibly whippy at that size. I've been smacked in the back with the tail of one this size and it hurt. But these aren't the ones that are dragging dogs and dragging people into the water. So still, absolutely keep your distance, but I like showing this to put in perspective how big they really are. And one way you can tell if it's a juvenile is they still have those really bright yellow stripes along their backs. Once they reach adulthood, they start losing that bright coloring. So the adults are those over 6 feet, and at 6 feet is when they tend to reach sexual maturity and adulthood and start contributing to the population. They can get pretty big here, but still not as big as we think. We are lucky we do not have the size alligators that Louisiana and Florida do. The males tend to max out at around 13 feet. The females tend to max out at around 9 feet. So they can get big. We've had a few that reach 500, 600, 700 pounds. But they tend to don't reach 100 pounds until they're 7 to 8 feet. So again, big, but not as big as we tend to jump to the conclusions we tend to make about them when we see them in a pond. Just kind of covered this. They're very long-lived creatures, especially for reptiles. If they learn to stay away from larger alligators, if they learn to stay away from people, they can live 40 plus years in the wild. We have alligators in captivity. I think the one in Cypress Gardens is 70, 80 years old minimum. So they're very, very long-lived. But the problem with that is it takes them a very long time to reach adulthood. So it takes them anywhere from 9 to 16 years to reach adulthood. So they're very similar to people where each generation takes a very long time to mature. And that's why it was so easy to almost wipe them out in the 60s, because you wipe out one generation and it takes 20, 30 years for it to be able to start rebounding again. So some questions we frequently get asked. Do you run from an alligator, but in particular, do you run in the zigzag? Still have yet to figure out where that myth was started. No, if you don't have to. If you are coming across an alligator and it's not doing anything, back away slowly and surely. Because we say this because we don't want you accidentally tripping in their presence if you don't have to. So if it's not coming after you, just back away, give it its space. Now, I would never say don't run from one if it's coming after you. Do what you have to protect yourself. But unless it's doing anything threatening, just give it its space as much as it needs. But I also like to mention the zigzag thing. You're zigging and zagging. It's coming straight for you. It's going to reach you sooner than you planned. So if you do have to run from one for whatever reason, just run as fast as you can in a straight shot. Get away from them. They can run pretty quick on land in short bursts, but it's not long. They're not cross-country running. So you just got to outrun them for a little bit. They can climb fences. They can burst through fences, especially like those really thin aluminum bars fences. What they're doing when they're climbing fences is when they travel over land, they want to take a direct route. They have a route in mind, and it's the straightest shot they can make. So if there's an obstacle, their very last thought, if at all, is to go around it. They're going to go over, under, or through first. They don't care what it is. So they'll climb the fences, they'll burst through the fences. That's how they end up stuck in garages a lot of times. In people's pools, they saw the pool and they just kept walking and they're in there. And then they freak out because they're stuck. And it takes them a while to figure out, to get their bearings, to find their way out of the pool, out of the garage. So if you're able to give them the space and the time to move on their own, because they will, open up all gates to your fencing, open up the garage doors, give it time to move on. However, that's not always the case and you need to leave a lot quicker. That's when we can send someone to help them move along. Because again, these typically aren't being a nuisance, it's just a wrong place, wrong time kind of situation that we need to kind of help them get through. The last one is relocation. So there's an alligator in the pond of my pond. I don't want it to die, but I don't want it here. Can we just move it? We don't relocate for several reasons. One of the big ones is if it's really a problem, we're not going to make it someone else's problem. So they do have to be euthanized if they need to be removed from a property. But the other big reason is they have this really strong homing instinct. So if they really like where they are and you take them somewhere else, they're just going to try to come back. So they're crossing over roadways, other neighborhoods, playgrounds, you name it. And they're just causing a lot more issues than they originally were. I mean, Florida did this study with crocodiles where they captured crocodiles, put GPS trackers on them, and moved them like 50, 60 miles away from where they were originally captured. All of those crocodiles tried to go back to where they were found. A few of them died from car accidents, a few of them made it, and a few of them just ended up living somewhere else. But they do try to go back to where they were found, especially if they really like it. So it's just a lot more of a hassle than it originally was. Now, for such large predator species, they do face several threats themselves. A lot of them are human-caused, whether it's us killing them, but what we see a lot along the coast, and not just in South Carolina, but throughout their entire range is human development. we're constantly developing along the coast and in wetlands that was previously their natural wild habitat. And so two things are happening. Either they're being displaced and they're off on their own for the first time looking for a new place to call home, or they're like, well, I'm going to stay here, and we're moving into their neighborhood. And so we're interacting with alligators a lot more because they're not going anywhere and neither are we. And especially for people along the coast in South Carolina, people who move here from the north and don't know anything about them, about their behaviors, it can be frightening when you encounter them for the first time. And so that's, a big part of my job is the outreach with, the more you understand their behaviors, the more you can identify if they're being a nuisance or not, the more we're hopeful, the more secure you feel about sharing space with them. So I'll go into a bit about what we do in DNR to manage for alligators in South Carolina. We do a few monitoring studies. One of the big ones we do are ice shine surveys in the summer months. We go out at night on public waterways and we shine a light and see how many alligators we can count. This is really helpful to kind of see where our alligators are living in the state. However, there's a give and take because we're doing this on public waterways, which is where the public hunt occurs. So a lot of the alligators have learned that boat traffic means hunting. And so they will disappear underwater before we get close enough to count them because they think that we're hunting them. But it still gives us a better idea of where they're located throughout the state. We also do some GPS tagging. The most recent we did was last year. We caught 6 alligators in Huntington Beach State Park, and I think it's Murrells Inlet. And we put GPS tags on them and released them. And so the purpose was, at the time, Huntington Beach was planning to dredge their only freshwater pond where all the alligators lived, and we wanted to see where they were going to go. They haven't dredged it yet, but they should be in the future, and so we're going to see kind of what they do when their only source of fresh water in that state park disappears for them. This is just really helpful with us kind of seeing how they move and when they move. And I've actually got a visual of an alligator that was GPS tagged at the end of the presentation. Another thing we do is market capture. So on our properties, we'll go out, we'll catch an alligator, we'll mark it, get as much information about it as possible, and release it. This kind of gives us a better idea of more localized populations and individual alligators. So for instance, this picture here on this slide, the top picture, that was a 7-foot female that was originally caught in 1981 on one of our properties. She was 7 feet, she was reproducing successfully. She had a few scars here and there, but otherwise she was living her great life. They marked her and released her. She was caught again in 2014. A little bit bigger, a little more scars, still reproducing successfully. So when she was caught in 2014, she was at minimum 30 years old. And this just goes to show how long they can live in the wild if they stay away from threats. And the good thing about where she was caught was it's a wildlife management area. It's not open to public hunting. There's not a lot of public traffic. So the alligators that live in places like that can live a long time because they're not interacting with people frequently. Now, everything alligator related is regulated through DNR. The big ones, it is illegal to feed and harass an alligator. And harassment can be anything from throwing rocks or sticks at it, trying to poke it with something, trying to pick it up. Really any human behaviors that the alligator comes out of the interaction alive. They may be a bit annoyed with us, but they're still alive. And so they're like, well, people are annoying, but they're not going to kill me, so I can approach every human-shaped blip, and they're going to be nice to me. And this is when they start to become very comfortable around people, start following people around because they don't think that they're going to die from that interaction. And that's when they get too friendly and it can become dangerous. So we want to avoid those people behaviors of harassment so that the alligators still have that fear of us. It's also illegal to kill or possess an alligator without the proper permitting, and that goes through us. And the only people who possess alligators in the state are educational facilities. So they have to go through this extensive permitting process. We have to check out their facilities every few years. So the gas station down the road, your neighbor, they shouldn't be having an alligator, and those are the ones we do have to confiscate. Then there's the education aspect of our program. I am the only outreach person for alligators, so it's just whenever I can do stuff. One of our newest things is GatorWise. So if you've heard of BearWise, what GatorWise is, it's a website that was created by every alligator biologist from Texas to North Carolina to Tennessee. It was one website jointly created with all of the alligator biologists to have one messaging. So there's one consistent messaging about alligators and living with them. It's still in the early stages, but it is, the goal is for it to be a one-stop shop for alligator information, because sometimes people just don't want to go to their state agency website. So this is just another option to learn more about alligators and how we manage for them. And then our removal programs, so we have 3 removal programs. We have 2 hunt programs. We have the private lands hunt, and this is for individual property owners who have several hundred or thousand acre properties. It's a 9-month-long season with the goal of the property owners can take care of the individual nuisance alligators while still maintaining healthy populations on their property. Then we have the public hunt. Like I mentioned earlier, it's one of our most popular hunts in South Carolina, if not the most popular. We had over 12,000 applicants last year, and it just goes up every year. I think we had applicants from 48 states, a couple from DC. This year we had a few people from Puerto Rico. We've had people from Canada in the past. We've had people from one other country in the past. So like people are from all over coming here to hunt alligators. Don't know why, but I won't complain. Like I said, it's really great for the local businesses, so if they can get some benefit from it, by all means. This is a 1-month-long lottery style. We offer 1,400 tags. If you get drawn and you bought the tag, then you can go hunt the alligator. Then we have the nuisance alligator program. This is our 3rd removal program. This is for individual nuisance alligators. These are the ones that are located in HOA communities and individual properties that you may have a couple acres pond and there's a small alligator that moved in. It's ones that it's places it shouldn't be, so in the middle of a roadway, a public business, public waterway, those kinds of alligators. The ones that have lost their fear of people, whether they were fed or they just got too comfortable. Those are the ones that do have to be removed and euthanized. In order to do that, the property owner does have to have a permit and a tag in order to do it. So if, say it's an HOA community, the HOA has to have the permit and tags. And then once they have that, they can call in a trapper service who will catch the alligator, remove, and euthanize it for y'all. In Port Royal, the town does have a permit and tag, so they are able to make executive decisions on which alligators need to be removed and which ones don't. And it's all up to the permit holder, because they're the ones who deal with the alligators. They can get experts out there if they need to determine if the alligator does need to be removed or not, things like that. So with the GatorWise site, there are 6 GatorWise basics. I kind of touched on all of this here and there throughout the presentation. These are just things you want to be aware of when you're in or near water. You always want to be aware of your surroundings. Keep an eye on any kids or pets that are with you. If you know there's an alligator there, don't let the kids and pets into the water. If you're fishing in an area, don't throw any food, any fish scraps, or anything like that back into the water. That will attract them. If you're fishing in an area and you know there's an alligator present, stop fishing. Give it a few weeks if you can, find a different fishing spot. I say this because we get a lot of reports about alligators chasing down people who are fishing. What they're doing is they're after your bait, they think the bobber is some kind of food, they want to wait for you to catch the fish and then steal it from you because they like the easy meal, they don't like to work for it, they will let you do the work and then take it from you. Or you're kind of gathering all of their normal prey items when you're fishing in one area, and that attracts them as well. So, if you're fishing in an area and there is an alligator there, stop and move to a different location. Sometimes they will move on once they realize that the easy meal has disappeared. Sometimes they don't, and we have to have them removed. Again, never feed alligators. It's illegal. It's incredibly dangerous, whether you're directly feeding them or you're indirectly feeding them by feeding the turtles in your pond. Again, they will hang out anywhere that they think there's free and easy food. So if you're feeding the fish and turtles in your pond and an alligator's hanging around, stop that. It may not be illegal to feed the fish, but you're teaching that alligator behaviors to be very interested in people. And once they think that people means food, that's when they start actively approaching people. So we don't ever want them to start learning those behaviors. Never harass, capture, or handle an alligator. Again, it's illegal, but also just dangerous. So we want everyone to stay safe. On average, we have reported harvest of around 1,000 alligators a year throughout our 3 removal programs. My guess is it's slightly higher because this is only what is reported to us. Don't know what people aren't telling us. But through our 3 programs, about 1,000 alligators a year, and I think it's going up a couple hundred in the next couple years, I believe. So this is the GPS visual I mentioned. So this was a 10-foot adult male that was caught in Santee Coastal Reserve, which is one of our wildlife management areas. They put a GPS tag on him and they released him. So he's going to be the red dot in line. He's kind of slow at the beginning because he was caught in October, at the end of October. So it's right before he starts his wintering. So we do have to wait a little bit before he really gets active. But I like showing this to people because it kind of really puts into perspective what I mean when I say that they can move around a lot, especially spring, early summer. This is primarily a wild area, but the alligators in very human populated areas are moving just as much. So we're in May right now, and he's about to go crazy. And so sometimes he's swimming several miles a day, back and forth between our 2 wildlife management areas. He really started in May. We're in August now, and he's still moving all over the place. Once we hit the fall, he gets really restricted because that's probably where his den is located. So he's getting his last meals in, but for the most part, he's just preparing for the winter. He's not traveling a lot. But you saw May to August, miles and miles a day. And he was primarily in a river, but again, the alligators in very human populated areas are moving just as much. It's just now, they're seeing a lot more because they're going neighborhood to neighborhood, crossing roadways, playgrounds. We get a few school calls. So these are the ones we're seeing just a lot more, but that's how much they move. And that's one of the reasons why sometimes if you call a coordinator and you're like, an alligator moved into my pond last night, I want it gone, it needs to be removed. If it's not exhibiting any nuisance behaviors, we try to wait it out because sometimes they're just passing through and they need to take a stop for a night, for a week, to rest, get more food, and then they're on their way. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes they'll end up in a pond, they're like, I really like where this is. They got food, they got fish, people aren't bothering me, other alligators aren't bothering me, and they call it home. But a lot of times they are just passing through, and you just got to give them the time to move on. Because if we issue like an individual permit, it can cost several $100s to hire someone to come remove it. And that's another reason we try to encourage you to give it time to move on, because we don't want you spending that much money to remove an alligator if you don't need to. But we still provide that option if needed. I think that's everything. Yes. So, I'm sure y'all's favorite part, question time. Please let me know, and I will mention when this is over, I do have a few like informational handouts, a few coloring books if y'all have any kids y'all want to give coloring books to and stickers. So feel free to grab it on your way out. But other than that, I am happy to answer some questions. All right. Oh, we're passing around the microphone. Perfect.
What does the indicate?
Their growl. So it can be a hiss. So they have a few different sounds. They have the hiss that you heard in the video, and that's kind of like a back off kind of noise. The growl, if it's happening early spring and it's like a very deep kind of like rumbling noise, is that what you're talking about?
Oh, yeah.
That's the mating call.
Okay.
So it can sometimes sound like a lawnmower. It's just like this really deep rumbling noise. We're not even hearing that half of it. It's making noise underwater for other alligators. So it's the male, yes, the dancing water. It's the male basically calling out to the ladies in the area saying, hey, here I am. Let's have a good time. So that's what that is. It's their mating call, and it's this month and maybe next month you'll be hearing a lot of it if you live by water. Yeah, I'm sure.
I just wanted to know, how can you tell male from female, or is that even possible from just
Just from looking at it, the only way to tell is if it's over 10 feet, it's likely a male. The only other way to identify it is you have to sex them internally. So it's hard to tell unless you're like us and you're catching alligators and you just kind of got to see what you feel. But looking at them across the water, it's hard to say because they do look identical.
If I'm out in my 7-foot little kayak and I come across an alligator, what do I do besides paddle as fast as I can in the opposite direction, if I can? If I get bottled up, what do I do?
Yeah, the first thing you want to do is either go the opposite direction or give it as wide a berth as possible. Remember that you do have the paddle. Use it if you need it. We've seen some videos of alligators that approach kayaks, and what we think is happening is they think it's another alligator. Because what they do is they'll bump into the kayak and then they'll disappear. So we think that they're checking it out. Once they realize it's not an alligator, they're backing off. But all I can tell you is just give it a wide berth, and if need be, remember you do have that paddle to use if needed.
Do you get records on injuries or damage throughout the state to people, emergency rooms,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera? Do you keep records on that?
Yes, we do, because anytime someone's bit or killed, we do respond. We do a full investigation. We remove the alligator and kill it. If there are multiple alligators in the pond, we remove them all to kind of make sure that the problem alligator was taken care of, make sure the people are okay if they survive. But we do keep records of that.
I read a report on the internet recently that said Beaufort County represents 61% of the attacks, alligator attacks, in the state of South Carolina. And you were mentioning nuisance gators a while, the criteria for an alligator to be considered a nuisance. Would you go over that for me one more time?
Yeah, so in determining if an alligator is a nuisance, typically it's those over 4 feet, just because those under 4 feet still have a natural fear of people. That's not always the case. Sometimes we have 2-footers that are just really curious and approach people all the time, and they do need to be removed. Ultimately, it depends on the property owner and what the alligator is exhibiting. So in my opinion, nuisance alligators are ones that do not retreat when people come near, that are actively going after people and pets when they're around the pond. Those are the ones that we are concerned about. But there are situations where in HOA communities or individual properties where it's just the tolerance is not there, and we can issue a permit for those as well. I hope that answered your question.
Well, we've got one at the pond right back here. And one of the reasons why I think this meeting has been formed is because it has been there since April of last year. I've got the emails to back that up. But the issue is that it's now gotten to a point where it is coming onto our backyard lawns. We can't use the backyard. There's a number of neighbors out here that are affected by that. So we can't use the backyard. We're still paying taxes for the backyard, but the alligators got the property.
Okay.
And that, the fact that we had issues where it's brought us gifts, dead animals.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things we got to be concerned about is we're right by that path that goes down to Shelburne
Okay.
and Fish Camp. And so a lot of people that are visiting the area are not aware that that alligator is in that pond. There are times, matter of fact, I don't know if everybody's here, but there was one time where the alligator literally was on the nose of the bank, right before it pressed over to the trail. And somebody was walking down that trail with 2 dogs, and I just happened to be out and warned him that I didn't know if the alligator was going to attack or not, but he needed to get the 2 dogs off that bank and away from the alligator. So we've had a number of issues with that thing where, we've got pictures of it trying to climb a fence in my backyard.
No, 1 minute. If I may address that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
Use the
what
microphone.
he's talking about is actually the pond right over here by Fish Camp Restaurant. There are signs posted out there that alligators live in this area. Now, I am the one that handles the alligator tags in Port Royal. So if you see an alligator is being aggressive, that's when I need to be notified, not 2 to 3 days later. I need to know immediately that it's doing that, because we're going to respond just like we would respond to any other call for service. We'll assess that. If that alligator is being aggressive, then I'll make that determination to go ahead and have that alligator removed. However, if it comes to question on my judgment to where I'm not doing this the right way, I'm doing, just trying to get rid of the alligator, that's when I'm gonna reach out to Miss Rebecca, because they're the experts. I personally do not want to start taking out alligators simply because they're in their natural habitat. That's what I don't want to be doing. No question on that.
And to that, I will make a point that one of the suggestions that we make to homeowners when an alligator moves in, if it's not being a nuisance and it's not exhibiting any nuisance behaviors, one of the reasons we say kind of wait it out, see what the alligator does, is because if you remove an alligator from a body of water, it becomes free real estate for another one. So if it's an alligator, say it's a 9-foot alligator in a pond, but it's not doing anything, we'd much prefer that one being there as opposed to removing it and say a 5-foot alligator moves in a week from now and that one has no fear of people and really wants your dog. So sometimes it's the devil you know, but again, that just all goes back to the behaviors that they're exhibiting, and it's the determination of what the permit holder decides needs to be done.
Rebecca, I've got a quick question on that. Like the DC said, it's the town, specifically him and I, with the town manager, have to make that decision whether or not it's a quote nuisance. We hope we're making the best decision.
Sure.
If the homeowner disagrees and the alligator is in their backyard, can they pay the money, get a permit, and remove it themselves?
Yeah, so there are times where individual homeowners within like HOA communities will issue that individual homeowner a permit because the alligator is in their yard almost 24/7. But they're restricted to catching the alligator when it's within their property. As soon as the alligator leaves the property, you can't do anything because it's no longer your property. So that's a really tricky situation, but we do occasionally kind of issue workarounds for those situations.
Okay, thank you.
She's had a question, she has one.
Sorry to interrupt all of that, but so I had a question. I do a lot of environmental education programs for Beaufort County, and one of the things that I was taught early on in my career that I haven't heard anyone else say, so I'm a little hesitant to say, is that when you have a nuisance alligator that is below, 5 feet, there is another way that you can kind of, I see you smiling, there's another way that you can kind of reinstill that fear of humans in them. Is that true? Is that something that you guys do?
It's something we're looking into, but it's not something we recommend to anyone because that falls into harassment. But we've had people who work with us who have looked into and studied, and a PhD student did do a study on hazing alligators. She was closely monitored by us and experts. We haven't had much results except for that study, so we can't really implement it just yet. So while it's out there, it's nothing we can recommend because we don't want anyone getting close enough to properly haze them and get hurt.
As far as the permit, is there a cost for the permit?
So the permit and the tags that come with the permit are free. What costs is hiring a trapper service. And so most people tend to hire a trapper service just because they don't have any experience catching alligators. Some people do. You may have a buddy who knows how to catch alligators, knows how to do it safely, follow all the guidelines, whether it's our guidelines, their guidelines. But most people do hire a trapper service, and the bigger the alligator, the more expensive it is. And it's hard to give a price because every trapper charges differently, but it can be several $100s to remove one.
I can tell you the last one I had removed was $1,500.
How big was it?
13 feet?
Yeah.
Huge,
Yeah.
That's been 7 months ago. When was that, Captain Hunter?
I just got it about a year
No, I
ago.
think Bunting handled it.
Yeah, I was here.
I just have
It
two
was trapped behind
questions.
the, shed.
Is how many alligators will live together successfully in a pond? And then also, when you have the hunt, what are people doing with the alligators that they hunt? Are they processed or something, or what happens then?
Yeah, so with the hunt, when people kill alligators, whether it's the public or the private lands hunt or the nuisance, the permit essentially makes that alligator yours once you kill it. So a lot of people, especially with the hunt, they will process as much as they can. They'll take the meat to eat, they'll take the hide, the skull. So most people tend to process some part of the alligator. Some people, especially with the nuisance permits, they tend to just dispose of the alligators. They'll bury them in the middle of the woods or proper disposal locations. But for your first question, it depends on how big they are. So the mom will she can sometimes have anywhere from 6 to 20 young with her. Once they're about 2 to 3 feet, she kicks them out. You can have a bunch of juveniles living together, but the bigger they get, the males get really territorial. So if there's a 9, 10, 11 foot alligator in a pond, it's likely a male, and the only time you'll see other alligators is mating season. It's typically a couple females he'll allow around, and then once mating season is done, he's back to being on his own. Because they get very territorial and they will fight.
I first would love to say thank you because I spoke to you. I live across the street from the retention pond, and you made sure that we had the sign on the other side because people didn't know.
Good.
Because the main, we get the most traffic on that side of the pond. Is there any way that they can put a sign up? Not so much, I guess, if there's another sign that they can put up to warn people that it's illegal. Because what happens is, I stand outside, I'm outside on my porch and I see kids biking by and throwing stones and it's very difficult for me because I be calling all the time.
Yeah.
But I do say to them, that's illegal. I've seen kids like pick up turtles and toss them.
Oh.
Yeah, it's disturbing, but I guess my question is there anything else we can do? Because I'm concerned with the safety once that Spanish Moss Trail goes
Yes,
over.
there is. Yes. You can call us, Port Royal Police Department, and people, listen to what I'm telling you and stuff. Call us, non-emergency dispatch. As soon as you call non-emergency dispatch, they're going to dispatch an officer. It's going to go over the radio. 5 to 6 officers are going to hear that call. They're going to start moving. Plus, I'm going to hear the call, or Captain Bunting's going to hear the call. We're going to start moving. The chief's going to start moving. We're going to see if this alligator is aggressive and what it's doing. However, if there are kids out there throwing stuff at it, anybody, I know some of the time the people come in for the graduations, they're not used to seeing, they'll throw food down there. We need to know that immediately because that is against the law. We have to address that. If not, that's what we're going to run into our problem with the nuisance alligators. So please call us. Do not email council. Do not email town manager. Do not email town hall. Call us, non-emergency dispatch. Now, if you don't know it, 843-524-2777. Lucky numbers at the end. Any more questions? Yes. Got one right back here first. Yes.
Yeah, that's okay. I just have a comment.
How fast do the alligators move on land?
I've seen, it seems like the consensus is 20 to 25 miles per hour in short bursts. Which doesn't, it's not reassuring. But again, it's short bursts. So they're, like I said, they're not running for very long.
So what do you consider short?
It's hard to say, honestly. And I don't know how the studies have actually measured how fast they run, because it's really hard to do that.
Can they jump?
Like vertical jump? Not really, especially because the bigger they get, I mean, they have short arms. Their arms just can't support their weight in that way. So I would say no. What they do sometimes, though, is when they're in the water, they can like kind of leap out of the water, but they're using their tail to propel themselves, and they'll kind of leap out of the water and then go back into the water. But they're not using their legs to kind of just jump up for whatever reason.
You mentioned the tail. I just want you to explain how both ends can be dangerous.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you never want to get near, I mean, any part of the body for the alligator, but they can really do some damage if they whip you with that tail.
I live right on the Cypress wetlands. How many alligators can live communally in the Cypress wetlands? Because there are a lot.
It's hard to say because I'm not familiar with that. But if it's a large area, there can be a handful of them. Again, it goes back to how big they are. Because if there's one large male living there, he's not going to tolerate having a lot of juveniles around. But if they can have space from each other, it's, you know, I deal with Lake Marion a lot, and there's Santee National Wildlife Refuge over there, and they have a lot of alligators there because there's no human traffic over there. So that they can congregate, but they're not doing it for long periods.
So how many?
Like I said, it's hard to say because I don't know what area you're talking about. I'm not familiar with this area.
She said 20 in one day.
Okay. Yeah. That's a lot.
I just wanted to make a comment. Thank you for the signage all around. I'm here for the winter, and I'm very aware of in the south that there are alligators. But what has really surprised me is I've met a lot of people that will say to me, they have alligators here? So here, my rule of thumb, the minute you travel down south and you see a palm tree, that equals alligators.
You're not wrong.
I just want to, as far as calling you, so I did experience with my poodle, where the 9th and the pond on 9th and Madrid, and I left, and I saw one of your police officers. I tracked him down. It was probably 5 minutes later when I got back there, and we couldn't find the alligator. It was gone.
And that happens a lot of times.
He was like, oh well.
Yeah, that's another reason our first suggestion is wait it out, because we have instances where we have to send an agent out to help an alligator move along 'cause it's under a car, and by the time the agent arrives, it's gone.
But this alligator has been there for months.
Yeah.
Probably a year now.
But he's allowed to be there. He's not a nuisance. He's allowed to live there.
And keeping in mind that because he ran away, he was gone when you came back, that is a good sign. Because at that point, he fears humans, so he's gonna run away. If he was there waiting on you to come back with your dog, because that's a different issue.
They know the sound of your car door.
They've seen me enough.
I appreciate this opportunity to hear all the facts today. Excellent show. I'm wondering, would it be advantageous if the signage, it may need to be approved per law, to have a significant fine so the word starts being spread to parents who let their kids right at the water edge fish. 2 weeks ago, I'm on Madrid, Katie and I as well, we witnessed 2 young boys, having a very close call with the alligator. I have it on video, but put that aside. I think the word needs to be spread that there's not just the warning of an alligator, but there's a consequence. So people start paying attention.
And we have a few signs. I'm not sure which ones y'all have posted, the yellow ones.
We got the one that you had on the video that says alligators live.
Okay, yeah, because we have the big yellow signs. We also have signs that are specific to no feeding. It just says feeding is dangerous and illegal, and it has our Operation Game Thief number, so you can report it, and we can send one of our people out there. And we also have one about keeping your dogs away from water, and I can pass along some of those signs if y'all need it.
It's about the kids.
Yeah, oh, trust me, I'm aware. It's hard to police when it's kids.
Well, money. Talks.
Yeah, and it can cost a couple of $100, depending on what officer of ours decides to respond. It can get pretty pricey.
Word spreads.
Yeah.
They digest the turtle shell.
They try not to eat the turtle shell, but it just breaks down in their stomach. They eat all kinds of things. I mean, we've opened up alligators and they have rocks in there. So what happens inside of an alligator, I don't need to know. I just know it works for them.
If somebody calls you to help move an alligator along, as you said, what do you do? What should we expect to see if you're coming to move an alligator along?
Yeah, so sometimes we'll send either our officers or we'll send a control agent. And that's in situations where, there's a very clear indication of where it was headed or coming from. There's a pond right nearby. So we'll send someone out there and they'll usually get it on a rope and drag it back to the nearest body of water. And that's just in situations, again, where they weren't doing anything wrong. They were just wrong place, wrong time. And we just need to get them away from people.
Last question.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I've always been a very avid kayak fisherman up north. And coming down here, I still want to pursue that activity. It gives me pause sometimes to look at the pond and see an alligator and go, boy, I'm going to get in the water with my kayak and fish. And I don't want to attract that alligator. I mean, how do you make a judgment about when you should go and not go? And what is your experience with that?
It's really hard to tell you what you should and shouldn't do. My default is do what you're most comfortable with. And I say that because I grew up in South Louisiana and we would go swimming in the bayous all the time. We didn't think twice about it. The further north you get, people's opinions change. Another thing I say is, it's similar to like when you go in the ocean. You know there are a bunch of things in there that can hurt you and you still go. It's all on what you're comfortable with. But if there's an alligator clear and present and it's hanging around in that area, don't do it.
Right.
Find a new area. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes,
you.
great.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming.
Real quick, first of all, I definitely want to thank Ms. Rebecca for coming down here and giving this great presentation. It is something we all needed. Also, I want to thank each and every one of you for coming. This tells me that you really care about what goes on in this Port Royal community. This is our community. Before I end this, and I want to bring the mayor up, and he wants to say a few words, that he can, give you some words and stuff. Thank you for being here, Mr. Willis. Thank you for being here as well, Chief, and my co-worker here, Peter Bunting. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all for being here. I came in and got to see the last part of it. Got caught up at work. Do have a day job and got to pay the bills. But I just want to say thank you so much for being here, and to our police officers. Again, we just wanted to really let y'all know, and thank you to the town manager, Van Willis, for putting this together. It was kind of his idea. We hear a lot about the alligators, especially the one at Madrid. And it's one of those things where we live in the low country. They're everywhere, and they're in our community, and they've been here before us. We live with them, but at the same time, we want you to know that your safety is important to us. Your pets are important to us. Our children, I have 2 small children, they're important to us. And so we just wanted to have a real, kind of honest conversation, get the facts out there, let you hear from the professionals, because I'm not a professional when it comes to alligators. I'm from Georgia, which is the South, but we didn't have alligators, so when I moved here, it's kind of a new thing to me to see in those. But I do think it's really good that we can get together, have that conversation. You can hear directly from the people that deal with it every day. She knows more about alligators than I think all of us combined. That was very informative. You've got law enforcement, they know their jobs. But I just really, we just wanted y'all to know that we're here, we're listening to you, and we're taking concerns very serious. It's not flippant to us. We do have laws and ordinances and regulations that we have to operate within. But again, I think today was great, and like I said, I learned a lot. I hope you learned a lot. Please, like you heard, call them if you've got an issue, but at the same time, you can always reach out to myself, any of our council members, and we want to hear from them. Well, I mean, in general, that was a general statement. If you ever just want to say, hey, how you doing? Just check in, like I said. You can just get a hold of us. We'll grab a beer, whatever you guys want to do. How about that? Was that better? Okay, all right. Again, thank you all so much. I thought that was really, really important.